Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters, we've been exploring so many figures, and Sheikh, I had a question. We've looked at so many people from the past, and it's kind of making me a bit anxious. Do we have figures and personalities like that now, or is it even achievable in this day and age?
So this is one of the really interesting things, because we can end up sometimes approaching the scholarship of the past as though this is something that belongs to the past and not for the present here and now.
Yeah.
Whereas alhamdulillah, those who will look more closely will recognize that those same efforts have been, I wouldn't say replicated, but they've been in many ways matched, or at least you can see there's a real living presence of similar efforts, or efforts that kind of resemble those that have passed by. I mean, even just generically, so some anecdotes to reflect on from our contemporary kind of scholars and peers in that respect. One such individual, truly remarkable, not born a Muslim or into a Muslim family. He was brought up amongst his family members, Hindu family members, became Muslim at the age of 15. He came across, some mentions that Islam was asserting itself, as per the Quranic verses and passages, as being the only acceptable way according to God, i.e. there was a singularity of the actual message sent to all the prophets and messengers with the same message of Islamic monotheism, Abrahamic monotheism. And he was somewhat taken aback by this. What he himself was familiar with was the notion that all religions are just different pathways up to the top of the mountain, in essence. And then he started comparing the claims, and he saw actually the claims of each religion, Islam and the religion that he kind of was more familiar with, was not the same. And it ultimately did make sense to him instinctively. It's going to be one or the other. He became Muslim, and thereafter he faced, some in the given community. He was in, some strong resistance, and even you could say a sense of feeling persecuted by them, and for having chosen Islam and chosen the name that he'd chosen initially for himself. He went and started traveling for knowledge. He even went to other countries to learn about the prophetic message and study the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. He eventually ended up graduating in a third country now with a bachelor's in Hadith. Then he went to another university in the same country to get a master's in again Hadith. Then he went over to Azhar University and graduated with his PhD. He became a professor thereafter in the Hadith science and the dean of the prophetic sciences department. But in addition to all of that, and that would seem like more than enough for most people. He then went on to collate a hadith book, which inshallah maybe we can look at one occasion. But it was 18 volumes, large or wide, each volume being in essence that wide. And it was a collection of all the hadith which he could find that met the standard of being, broadly speaking, sahih. And that is in the title of the book itself was Al-Jami' Al-Kamil. Now the reason why it was called Jami' Al-Kamil was because if you look at Sahih Bukhari itself, is Al-Jami' Sahih Mukhtasar, the abridged Sahih. Whereas he was now saying, okay, that was abridged, but if someone were to ask me, can I try and point them to a direct, where's all the Sahih Hadith? It seems to be scattered in different books. But if I was to try and say to them in one book, I can't actually say there's such a book that I'm aware of. So being asked this question and seeing that there was no simple answer that he felt he could provide, a book that he could simply point to, he saw that this kind of interaction almost revealed for him something of a vacuum, something of a need that needed being addressed. And he sought to use his own skills, abilities, intelligence, and his own life ultimately to try and address that question. And he spent the next several years and the remainder of his own career to try and produce this book. As I say, 18 volumes large and wide, and 18 volumes long. And literally, when you look at it and when you read it, just in terms of how he has ordered it, and everything being very carefully calibrated and balanced in terms of the wording, in terms of the technical sciences. It truly presents itself almost like a work of art. And this is because, again, it's the simple same pattern that we see of old. A person like yourself or myself, Brother Hisham, who then uses the opportunities that Allah has placed at their disposal, the skills and capabilities and ilm and knowledge, and then tries to progressively, incrementally and systematically apply those skills towards the preservation and the development of the legacy of the Prophet ﷺ. And leaving behind a tremendous sadaqah jariyah, one which makes that person's name actually truly memorable, and not, I would say, for the intention of that, for that being the intention. The intention being to actually serve the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and his beautiful prophetic way. Another example, also actually someone brought up, and not with Arabic being their mother tongue, because sometimes someone might say, okay, just as you asked earlier on, saying that was this something just of the years gone by, centuries gone by. Yeah. Others say, what happens if you're not brought up in, I don't know, Muslim majority society, or you're not brought up with Arabic being your mother tongue?
Yeah.
And in essence, our response is this, my response is this, that none of these are justifications or reasons or excuses for us not to try and excel, for us not to also be people of service and of benefit and preservation.
If we look at the 6 books of hadith, all of them were non-Arab.
Absolutely. And there's a famous anecdote in Al-Ba'ith al-Hadith, which is a book by Ibn Kathir in the sciences of hadith, and also most of the classical sciences of hadith books, such as of the same genre of Musallah hadith. It speaks of a specific narration where a man called Zuhri, he goes and meets the caliph of the time and says, who have you left behind in such and such land? In Makkah, he says, Ata bin Abi Rabah. And he says, is he from the Arab or al-Mawali? Those who kind of became introduced into the community thereafter. He says, Min al-Mawali. He says, what about from Yemen? He said, same thing. In several different regions, and almost 80 or 90% of those regions he mentioned, out of 12 regions, were actually from those who came into the Muslim community, not necessarily born with the Arabic language, learnt it, mastered it, and then served Islam either through the Quran, the Tafsir, the Sunnah, etc. And just to give the contemporary example I was mentioning, there was another such individual who saw that there was, again, a gaping hole in terms of, as modern societies have developed and emerged, financial systems and regulations have become much more complex. How does Islam speak to this sort of scenario where it requires Islamic guidance, but applied to situations which are complex, where financial instruments are complex, things like cryptocurrencies and the banking systems, etc. And so what he did is, in addition to studying the traditional curriculum and mastering it, he set about really mastering, or at least qualifying, both in law, mainstream law, as well as accountancy and knowing how financial systems work, and brought all of that together in order to be able to offer fatwa and solutions and an Islamic perspective on the issues such as when there's a financial crash. What is the Islamic perspective on such a phenomenon? What is are the Islamic readings and analysis of that of this occurrence, beyond simply saying, okay, there's riba and what, an actual insider's perspective while coming through the lens of Islam itself.
Wow.
So this is something which requires someone to recognize it's not just a case of telling the stories of the past. These are stories of the past to inspire the present minds to use their capabilities, their intelligence, their aptitude, and their opportunities to try and apply principles, sacred, timeless principles, for novel, new emerging situations. And so this is another example of that. And a third example, perhaps I can briefly tell you, Brother Ahtisham, another one, actually one of my own teachers, and there have been a few who've done this actually, written books on issues which are not addressed. One of them was about female scholarship of the past. And I can think just right now of two separate authors who've done this, one of whom actually wrote a compendium, an encyclopedia in reality, just of female scholars. And it came to 53 volumes. This is someone of our time and our.
I think it's still expanding. The recent number is 63.
This is what we hear. But this goes to show you that, and simply the story behind it was again a simple article in one of the broadsheet newspapers, suggesting that perhaps female scholarship was not really that much of a phenomenon in the past. He sat back and thought, hang on a minute, I'm sure I recollect just 10 or 12 women right now who are really famous scholaresses of the past of Islam. Let me try at least put that together in kind of one volume. One volume soon became 2 and 7 and 8. And it then kept on going. Yeah. But this is again a mindset. It's a question of mindset and intentions. Are we looking, inshallah we are looking, to be people who use our skills to try and address issues, questions and problems, and hopefully thereby provide also solutions and answers, inshallah.
Inshallah.